Pastor, I got a chance to see you down in Sarasota at More Than Words, and the one thing that really struck me and my wife as we were there with the kids was how transparent you were. I think you talked about a health problem and a car accident, and while there was some levity to that sharing, there was a transparency there that was very, very moving for me. And I think one of the hardest things for a pastor sometimes to know where to find that line and what to share, not to share, and how to approach it and that kind of thing. What can you tell pastors and what can you tell congregations about how a pastor needs to manage that part of their personal lives, not personal lives, those kinds of things? It's just a very sticky conversation. I think in 2020, especially with social media and everything, it's just the world's really, really complicated itself.
Yeah, I think that it is a fine line. I don't want to live my life in public, and I don't really feel like a lot of what I'm walking through personally, dealing with personally, needs to find its way into every one of my Sunday messages. The flip side of that is if I look one-dimensional and I sound one-dimensional, then it creates a false hope, I think, for people that are sitting there listening like, man, this guy's bulletproof. And no one is bulletproof. No pastor is. And every pastor I know has gone through hardship, difficulty, loss, disappointment, failure. And I think that we have to find the balance of not, hey, every single thing I go through, I'm going to bring that out in my message this coming week. But I have to also be willing to be human, because to be human is to show the power of the gospel. It says we have this treasure in jars of clay, so that the excellency of the power might be of God and not of us. And so I have to preach out of a jar of clay, because that's what I am. And jars of clay have cracks and imperfections, and I think that, especially when we hit big rocks and God brings us through big storms, we have a stewardship and an obligation to talk about those storms. And I know for me, most people know, 10 years ago, some odd years, I went through a big bout of darkness, depression, anxiety, and made it out miraculously. And I could have just closed the door on that like a guy wants to do and say, I don't want to talk about that. I just want to move on. But to talk about it has helped so many people and brought encouragement to so many people. And God doesn't bring us through the valley so that we can just close the door and move forward. He brings us through so that we can share the hope of that with other people that are maybe stuck in the middle and not sure they're going to make it out. So I think it's just that balance. And as we mature, as we seek wise counsel around us, I think you learn. I definitely am around some guys preaching that I feel like are oversharing, and I feel more burdened by listening to them because I'm weighted down at the end of it by all the stuff they shared, and I'm like, I didn't really need to know all that. And so I do see that side of the pendulum, but I also hear some people occasionally that it just feels like somehow you've managed to avoid the conflict of living on a broken planet. I don't know how you did that, but man, I'm certainly not at that spot. And then I have some good role models of people that are in the middle that it's like, yeah, I can see that there is victory in the story, but I also see that there has been some defeat in the story. And even in the defeat, God has brought victory as well. I think it's finding that balance and growing in maturity of knowing how to manage that conversation. That's where I want to be.
I couldn't agree more. I think that's a great way to summarize it.